Deputies blocked a $6 million marina. Then they opened my deed. I bought 9,600 acres because I wanted peace, not a fight. Then one morning, I found hundreds of strangers crossing a road my deed said belonged to me. The HOA insisted it was theirs. Security tried to stop me. Lawyers started digging. Deputies showed up. And before the busiest weekend of the year was over, a $6 million marina had lost the only road leading to it. The truth wasn't hidden in an argument. It was buried inside county records nobody expected me to read. Stay with me, because every answer only uncovered a bigger secret. And if you enjoy true-style HOA, ranch, and property rights stories where patience, evidence, and common sense matter more than shouting, consider subscribing. We'd love to have you here for the next story. I did not expect to see sheriff's deputies blocking the only road into Pine Harbor Marina on the busiest Saturday of the summer. I definitely did not expect them to be standing on my land when they did it. By 7 o'clock that morning, pickup trucks pulling expensive fishing boats stretched nearly a quarter mile down the county road. Families climbed out carrying coolers and folding chairs. Children ran toward the docks with life jackets hanging from their shoulders. Marina employees unlocked fuel pumps while mechanics rolled tool carts toward waiting boats. It looked like every other lake festival weekend. Then 2 sheriff's trucks pulled across the entrance. No sirens, no shouting. Just 2 county vehicles stopping side by side until the gravel road disappeared behind steel bumpers. The conversations died almost instantly. Drivers shut off their engines. Boat trailers stopped rolling. A man carrying 3 fishing rods froze halfway across the parking lot, staring at the barricade as if he expected someone to explain it. Nobody did. Not at first. I stood about 30 yards away beside an old split-rail fence, holding a thick leather folder beneath one arm and a paper cup of coffee in the other. I had been there long before sunrise, quietly watching deputies compare survey stakes against maps spread across the hood of a patrol truck. Everything happening that morning had been planned carefully. Everything except Vanessa Holloway. Her white SUV rounded the curve so fast that gravel sprayed across the shoulder. She slammed the door behind her before the engine even finished idling. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded as she marched toward the deputies. "Move these trucks immediately." Neither deputy reacted. Sheriff Daniel Brooks looked up from a folded survey, then calmly replied, "Morning, Ms. Holloway. You cannot shut down our marina. No one has shut down your marina. You blocked the road. We're maintaining a civil standby." She pointed directly at the barricade. "That road serves this entire community." Sheriff Brooks glanced toward the survey markers running along the ditch. "We're aware." Her voice grew sharper. "I want this man removed from the property." She finally noticed me. Her eyes locked onto mine, and she walked across the gravel with the confidence of someone who had spent years believing every disagreement ended in her favor. "Ethan Caldwell." I nodded once. "Vanessa, you need to tell them to move those trucks." I took another sip of coffee before answering. "I agree." For the briefest moment, relief crossed her face. Then I finished. Nobody should be blocking access to private property. Her expression hardened. "What are you talking about? The marina isn't what they're protecting." She folded her arms. "Then what are they protecting?" I looked down the quiet gravel corridor disappearing toward the lake. "My road." The words settled over the crowd much harder than I expected. Several homeowners exchanged confused looks. Someone behind the boat trailers whispered, "Did he say his road?" Vanessa laughed, but it sounded forced. "This community has used that road for decades. So has everyone else." "Exactly." I shook my head. "Use isn't ownership." Silence spread through the gathering. Not the silence of agreement, the silence people fall into when they suddenly realize the conversation they're hearing isn't the one they thought they were walking into. Sheriff Brooks stepped beside us carrying a document folder. "Ms. Holloway," he said evenly, "can you provide documentation establishing permanent recorded access rights across this corridor?" She answered immediately. "This marina has always had access. I didn't ask about history. It serves hundreds of homeowners." "I understand. It has operated here for years." "I understand that too." He waited. "So, do you have the recorded easement?" The confidence on her face slipped. Only for a second. Long enough for everyone standing nearby to notice. "Our attorney handles those documents." Sheriff Brooks nodded politely. "Are those documents available today?" She didn't answer. The silence grew heavier. Boat owners stopped looking at me. They started looking at Vanessa. One deputy unfolded a large survey map across the hood of his truck. Bright red boundary lines crossed directly beneath the road leading toward the marina. I stepped forward without saying a word and laid my leather folder beside it. Inside were certified surveys, county deed records, title reports, boundary descriptions. Every page had my name on it. Nobody reached for them. Nobody argued. People simply stared. A retired man near the front of the crowd removed his sunglasses and quietly asked the question everyone else seemed afraid to say aloud. "If that road belongs to him," he looked toward the marina, "then what exactly have we been driving across all these years?" No one answered him, because at that moment, nobody standing there, not the homeowners, not the contractors, not even Vanessa Holloway, understood how one overlooked piece of paperwork had quietly turned a $6 million marina into the center of the biggest legal mistake Pine Harbor Estates had ever made. They were about to find out. 6 months earlier, I thought I had purchased nothing more than a quiet ranch beside Kentucky Lake. I had no idea one forgotten road would change everything. After my wife, Laura, passed away, I reached a point where silence no longer felt empty. It felt necessary. Friends suggested traveling. My brother wanted me to move closer to family. Instead, I bought 9,600 acres of rolling pasture, hardwood timber, and shoreline outside any city limits. I wasn't looking for another career. I wasn't chasing an investment. I simply wanted a place where nobody expected anything from me. Closing on a property that size took nearly 3 months. Stacks of title reports covered the conference table. Survey maps stretched wider than the attorney's desk. Every parcel, fence line, creek crossing, and utility corridor had to be verified before the deed could be recorded. I read every page. That habit came from 32 years investigating insurance claims. Small details were never small. Most expensive lawsuits started because somebody ignored a sentence buried halfway through a document. When the sale finally closed, I drove through the front gate alone. The ranch felt untouched. Old cedar posts leaned along forgotten fence lines. Windmills stood where cattle tanks had once been full. Empty barns still carried faded livestock brands from families long gone. Every morning I poured coffee into a travel mug, climbed into my pickup, and spent hours learning the property one trail at a time. I repaired broken gates, marked washed-out culverts, cleared fallen limbs from old ranch roads. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. Then I reached the eastern boundary. The change happened almost instantly. The quiet disappeared. Instead of cattle paths, I found fresh tire tracks. Instead of wildlife, I saw golf carts. Luxury pickups towing bass boats rolled past every few minutes. Fuel trucks followed behind them. Contractors hauled equipment trailers toward the shoreline as if they had driven that route 1,000 times. I pulled onto the shoulder and unfolded the survey I'd carried since closing. The road beneath my truck matched a narrow corridor highlighted inside my property boundary. I checked the mile marker. Checked the creek crossing, checked the legal description. Same answer every time. According to my deed, I was standing on my own ranch. Yet hundreds of strangers drove across it without slowing down. At first, I assumed there had to be a recorded easement. Large ranches often shared access with neighboring properties. Utility companies, logging crews, and emergency services frequently crossed private land under legal agreements. Nothing about the traffic bothered me. The paperwork did. For the next several days, I returned at different hours. 6 in the morning, lunch, late afternoon. Every visit produced the same pattern. The marina never stopped moving. Boat mechanics, landscaping crews, fuel deliveries, residents heading toward the docks. Every vehicle depended on that single gravel road. One afternoon, I parked beside an aging fence and watched nearly 30 vehicles pass within an hour. Not one driver hesitated. Not one looked around. Everyone behaved as though the road belonged to Pine Harbor Estates. That confidence interested me more than the traffic itself. People usually become comfortable only when they've been told something repeatedly. The question was simple. Who told them? Later that afternoon, I spread the survey across my kitchen table beside the recorded deed. The legal description followed the roadway almost perfectly before continuing toward the lake. I traced it twice with my finger, then a third time. The line never left my property. A narrow handwritten note from the closing surveyor caught my attention. Private roadway contained within Parcel 7. Nothing more. No mention of HOA ownership. No recorded public dedication. No marina access notation. Just 4 ordinary words. I folded the map and slid it back into its tube. Either I was missing an important document, or hundreds of people were relying on something other than ownership. The next morning, a white SUV pulled onto the shoulder beside me. A woman stepped out wearing sunglasses, polished boots, and the kind of confident smile that suggested she rarely heard the word no. She introduced herself before I could speak. "My name's Vanessa Holloway." Then she looked past me toward the road. I assume the previous owner explained how everything works around here. Something in the way she said it made me ask the only question that mattered. Who actually owns this road? She smiled, but she didn't answer. Instead, Vanessa glanced down the gravel road where another pickup pulled a fishing boat toward the marina. "The community depends on this access," she said smoothly. "You'll see how important it is once you've been here a little longer." I waited. She looked back at me as if the conversation had already ended. "I didn't ask how important it is," I said. "I asked who owns it." For the first time, her smile tightened. "Pine Harbor has maintained this corridor for years. That's maintenance. We've invested a great deal into it. That's investment. Our homeowners rely on it. That's reliance." She folded her arms. "You ask very specific questions, Mr. Caldwell. I spent most of my career getting paid to ask them." She laughed softly, though there wasn't much humor behind it. "I think you'll discover that some things around here have been settled for a long time. By paperwork, by the community." Again, not an answer. She wished me a pleasant afternoon, climbed back into her SUV, and drove toward the marina. I watched the dust settle before looking back at the survey tube in my truck. The road hadn't changed. Neither had the deed. Only my questions had multiplied. Over the next week, I stopped treating the road like an observation and started treating it like an investigation. Every morning I parked in a different location, sometimes near the eastern fence, sometimes beside the old cattle crossing, sometimes close enough to the marina entrance to watch traffic without attracting attention. Patterns appeared almost immediately. Fuel deliveries arrived twice a month. Marine mechanics drove service vans through nearly every weekday. Landscaping crews trimmed flower beds surrounding decorative stone signs that read, "Pine Harbor Marina." Those signs bothered me, not because they existed, because one of them appeared to stand several feet inside my property line. I photographed it. Then I photographed the survey marker beside it. Documentation had solved more disputes in my career than arguments ever had. One afternoon, I stopped at the Marina store for a cup of coffee. The cashier, a gray-haired man wearing a faded fishing cap, smiled as he rang up my purchase. "You new around here?" "Bought the ranch east of the Marina." His face brightened. "Beautiful property." We talked about fishing for a few minutes before I casually nodded toward the road outside. "Busy entrance." He chuckled. "Always is." "Who owns it?" He shrugged. "The HOA, I guess." "You guess?" He looked surprised by the question. "Well, everybody says it's theirs. Have you ever seen anything that says it is?" He frowned. "No." His answer stayed with me long after I left. Not because it proved anything, because it proved nothing. The certainty I'd heard from homeowners wasn't built on documents. It was built on repetition. Somebody told them. Then someone else repeated it. Year after year, the story became accepted as fact. Late that afternoon, I drove the entire length of the road. Near the marina entrance, I found another surprise. Fresh landscaping, decorative lighting, stone retaining walls, everything carefully maintained, everything giving the appearance that Pine Harbor owned every inch surrounding the entrance. Appearances matter, especially when people stop asking questions. As I turned back toward the ranch, I noticed a maintenance crew replacing one of the marina signs. The crew chief walked over. "Morning." "Morning." He pointed toward my pickup. "You with the county?" "No." "Developer?" "No." He looked confused. "Then why are you taking pictures?" I smiled. "Because I own the land under that sign." His expression changed immediately. He looked toward the sign, then toward the road, then back at me. "I didn't know that." "I don't think many people do." That evening I spread every closing document across my dining room table again. Survey, deed, title commitment, parcel map. The answer wasn't there. But one thing became impossible to ignore. If nobody could answer a simple ownership question, then eventually the county records would, and I intended to read every one of them. I planned to start the following Monday. The HOA made sure I didn't have that long to wait. A heavy rain moved through the area 2 nights later, washing gravel into one of the drainage ditches running beside the Marina Road. I drove over with a shovel and a measuring rod to make sure the runoff wasn't cutting deeper onto my property. I had barely stepped out of my truck when a white security SUV rolled in front of me and stopped. A man wearing a Pine Harbor security shirt climbed out. He looked uncomfortable before he ever spoke. "Morning, sir." "Morning." He glanced toward the road behind me. "I'm going to have to ask you to turn around." I looked at him for a second. "Turn around?" "This roadway is restricted to Marina members." I honestly thought I had misunderstood him. "I'm checking drainage on my property." He shifted uneasily. "I understand, sir. I'm just following HOA policy." There it was. Not county ordinance, not a court order, not a recorded easement. HOA policy. I rested both hands on the bed of my truck. "Do you know who owns this road?" He hesitated. "I've always been told the association controls it." "Controls it or owns it?" His silence answered before he did. "I don't know." Neither of us raised our voices. The man wasn't trying to bully me. He was repeating instructions someone else had given him. "I appreciate you doing your job," I said. "I'm going to continue doing mine." I drove slowly past him and spent 15 minutes inspecting the ditch before returning home. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. It changed everything. The following afternoon, I noticed something new. Fresh landscaping had appeared around one of the decorative marina entrance signs. Mulch covered the ground. New shrubs lined the edge of the road. The sign itself sat exactly where my survey suggested my property began. I photographed the sign, then the survey marker, then both together. An hour later, I received a certified letter. The return address read, Pine Harbor Estates Homeowners Association. Inside was a formal notice demanding that I remove recently placed boundary markers because they created a hazard to community traffic and interfered with HOA operations. I read the letter twice. Not once did it mention a deed. Not once did it reference a recorded easement. It simply assumed authority. I called the number listed at the bottom. Vanessa answered on the second ring. I was expecting your call. I imagine you were. The survey stakes are causing unnecessary confusion. They identify my property. The community has safely used that corridor for decades. I've heard that. Then surely you understand. I understand people have used it. She paused. I also understand you still haven't answered my question. What question? Who owns it? Silence. Just long enough to become uncomfortable. Finally, she replied, The board considers access a settled matter. Settled by whom? You'll need to discuss that with our attorney. The line went dead. The next morning, a county patrol truck pulled into my driveway. Sheriff Daniel Brooks stepped out carrying the certified complaint. He introduced himself, shook my hand, and explained that Pine Harbor had reported my survey markers as an obstruction to marina traffic. I figured I'd hear both sides before writing anything down, he said. I appreciated that. We walked the property together. I showed him my deed. The survey, the parcel map. He studied each document carefully before looking toward the roadway. Mr. Caldwell, he said, this doesn't look like a criminal issue. I didn't think it was. It looks like an ownership question. Exactly. He handed my paperwork back. My advice is simple. Don't remove anything. Don't block anything. Let the documents determine who has the right. That was the most sensible thing anyone had said since I'd bought the ranch. As Sheriff Brooks drove away, I noticed another white SUV parked half a mile down the road. Vanessa was watching the entire conversation through her windshield. When the patrol truck disappeared over the hill, she smiled. She thought the deputy had solved her problem. She had no idea he'd just confirmed mine. That afternoon, I called two people. Surveyor Clay Dawson, and real estate attorney Rachel Mercer. If the truth existed anywhere, it wasn't going to be found in HOA newsletters or neighborhood meetings. It was waiting inside the county courthouse. And that's exactly where we were headed. 3 mornings later, I met Surveyor Clay Dawson and attorney Rachel Mercer outside the county records office. Neither wasted time with speculation. We'll let the paperwork tell the story, Rachel said as we walked inside. That was exactly what I wanted. County Recorder Olivia Grant greeted us from behind a long counter lined with plat books and deed indexes. Rachel explained that we were tracing the ownership history of a private roadway serving Pine Harbor Marina. Olivia nodded thoughtfully. If there's a recorded easement, she said, we'll find it. For the next several hours, old plats, subdivision maps, title transfers, and scanned deeds covered an entire research table. Clay quietly compared legal descriptions while I followed each parcel through decades of ownership. Nothing looked unusual at first. The ranch changed hands several times. The marina expanded in phases. Additional docks appeared over the years. Parking lots grew larger. Storage buildings were added. Every improvement generated permits. Every permit generated paperwork. But one document kept leading us back to the same question. The access road. Olivia finally placed an older development file in front of us. This may interest you. Inside was a proposal submitted more than a decade earlier. It requested a permanent access easement across what was then neighboring ranch property. Engineering drawings, survey exhibits, legal descriptions, everything needed to create the easement. Everything except the final recorded agreement. Rachel slowly turned every page. No signatures. Clay checked the recording information. No book number. Olivia searched the county database again. No recording. The application existed. The easement did not. That alone wasn't enough to answer every question. So we kept digging. Late that afternoon, Olivia returned carrying another archive box. This one's from the Marina expansion. Inside, we found contractor permits, inspection reports, and one thin agreement labeled Temporary Construction Access. Clay spread it across the table. The document allowed heavy equipment to cross the ranch, while additional docks and shoreline improvements were being built. I read every paragraph carefully. Temporary, limited purpose, specific construction period. Then my eyes reached the final page. Expiration date. 9 years earlier. Rachel looked at me. Keep reading. I did. Nothing extended it. Nothing renewed it. Nothing converted it into permanent access. When the agreement expired, the paper trail simply stopped. Olivia searched every recording system the county maintained. Current records, archived indexes, historical microfilm. Nothing. She leaned back in her chair. I've worked here 22 years. She tapped the expired agreement. I've never seen a permanent replacement recorded. The room grew quiet. Clay uncapped a red marker and traced the roadway across the newest survey. The corridor never leaves your parcel. He looked at Rachel. If there isn't another recorded instrument somewhere, Rachel finished the sentence. Then the Marina has been operating on an assumption. That word stayed with me. Assumption. Outside, hundreds of people probably believed the HOA owned the road. Inside the courthouse, every document suggested something very different. We copied every relevant record before leaving. As we loaded the files into Rachel's truck, she paused beside the tailgate. I'm not ready to accuse anyone of wrongdoing. Neither am I. But we now have 2 facts. I waited. The roadway sits inside your recorded property. She held up the expired agreement. And the only access document we've found expired years ago. Clay folded the survey tube under one arm. I'll complete a full boundary verification this week. Rachel nodded. And once that's finished, I'll review every title exception connected to the Marina. For the first time since buying the ranch, I felt the balance beginning to shift. Not because we'd won anything, because facts were finally replacing assumptions. As I drove home, my phone rang. Rachel, I almost forgot, she said. What's that? Olivia found one more archive file. What kind of file? Planning correspondence connected to the Marina expansion. Anything important? I don't know yet. Her voice grew quieter. But if what's inside mentions that missing easement, she let the sentence hang. This case is about to become much bigger than a road. Rachel called me back the next morning. Olivia finished organizing the planning files. You should come in. By noon, the 3 of us were back in the courthouse conference room. Clay Dawson had already completed the first draft of his boundary verification, and it matched every survey we'd reviewed. The roadway never left my ranch. The county maps, the GPS measurements, and the original deed all pointed to the same conclusion. There was still one question. If the paperwork was this clear, how had Pine Harbor Marina expanded into a multi-million-dollar operation without anyone fixing the access issue? Olivia answered that by sliding a thick planning binder across the table. This covers every major marina expansion. Rachel opened it. The earliest projects looked ordinary enough. Dock permits, shoreline stabilization, utility approvals. Then larger improvements appeared. Additional slips, a fuel station, storage buildings, maintenance facilities, parking expansion. Each project made the marina more valuable. Each project made the road more important. Clay tapped the map. Every contractor bringing materials here used this corridor. Rachel nodded. So did every fuel delivery, and every emergency vehicle, and every customer. I leaned back in my chair. The marina doesn't simply benefit from this road. Rachel finished the thought. It depends on it. That changed the stakes immediately. This wasn't a disagreement over a gravel lane crossing a ranch. It was the only practical entrance supporting a business worth millions of dollars. The room grew quiet as Olivia opened another folder. These are appraisal records submitted during a refinancing. Rachel scanned several pages before stopping. There. She turned the document toward me. One sentence had been highlighted. Permanent private access road serving marina facilities. I read it twice, then a third time. There isn't any supporting document attached. There isn't, Rachel agreed. The appraisal states permanent access exists, but no recorded easement accompanies the file. Clay folded his arms. So somebody certified something they never documented. Nobody rushed to conclusions. That wasn't how any of us worked. Instead, Rachel wrote 3 questions across the top of her legal pad. Who believed permanent access existed? Who verified it? Who failed to record it? Those questions mattered far more than accusations. Late that afternoon, Rachel organized everything into a single binder. Survey maps, title reports, historical deeds, expired construction agreement, planning records, appraisal language. Nothing sensational, just evidence. We're not ready for litigation, she said. What are we ready for? A conversation. She drafted a formal certified notice addressed to Pine Harbor Estates. The letter summarized the survey findings without exaggeration. It explained that no recorded permanent easement had been located during the title review and invited the HOA to provide any documents we might have missed. Most importantly, it offered a solution instead of a threat. 45 days. Time to negotiate. Time to produce records. Time to discuss purchasing a lawful easement if one truly didn't exist. I signed the letter without changing a word. The certified receipt confirmed delivery 3 days later. Then we waited. The first week passed. Nothing. The second week brought only silence. The third week became stranger. Fresh mulch appeared around the marina entrance signs. Several survey stakes disappeared overnight, before quietly reappearing a few days later in nearly the same locations. Workers relocated decorative stone planters closer to the roadway. It looked less like maintenance and more like someone trying to reshape appearances. Then Rachel called. They finally responded. I drove straight to her office. The HOA's attorney had sent 12 pages. Community expectations, historical use, economic hardship, reliance, tradition, property values. I read every paragraph carefully. Then I set the letter back on Rachel's desk. What's missing? She smiled. You noticed. There isn't a single recorded easement. Not one. No deeds. No signed agreement. No county recording number. Just arguments. As I left her office, I realized something had changed. Until now, I'd been wondering whether Pine Harbor had overlooked the paperwork. Now I was beginning to wonder whether they had been avoiding it. And if that was true, the story was about to become much bigger than a missing road. The 33rd day of Harbor Ridge's 45-day response period began like every other morning. I checked fences, walked a pasture, drank coffee on the porch overlooking the lake. From a distance, Pine Harbor Marina looked exactly as it always had. Boats came and went, fuel trucks rolled through the entrance, golf carts carried homeowners toward the docks. Nothing had changed, except the paperwork. Just after lunch, Rachel Mercer called. "I need you in my office." Her voice was calm, too calm. When I arrived, the conference table was covered with documents I had never seen before. Not deeds, not surveys, emails, meeting minutes, planning correspondence. Olivia Grant had located another archive box that had been stored separately from the county planning files after the original Marina expansion. Rachel slid the first document toward me. This came from the development review records. Most of the pages were ordinary. Scheduling, permits, contractor updates. Then one paragraph caught my attention. A former HOA treasurer had written to the board during the Marina expansion, nearly 8 years earlier. "We never finalized the permanent recorded access after the developer transferred ownership. We should resolve this before future expansion." I looked up. Rachel nodded. "Keep reading." The next page contained a reply. The sender's name sat at the top. Vanessa Holloway. Her response was only one sentence. "Do not create panic over paperwork. We have operated this way for years." I read it again, then again. The email did not admit fraud. It didn't prove anyone intentionally broke the law, but it proved something almost as important. Someone had recognized the missing documentation. Someone had raised the issue, and instead of fixing it, the discussion had stopped. Clay Dawson leaned over the table. "That changes the timeline." "It changes more than that," Rachel said. "Until today, we knew the easement wasn't recorded." She tapped the email. "Now we know board leadership may have known." The room fell silent. I thought about every conversation I'd had with Vanessa. Every time I'd asked who owned the road. Every time she'd answered with words like community, tradition, reliance, settled. Never ownership. Never recorded access. Never deeds. For the first time, those conversations felt intentional. Rachel closed the file. "This doesn't mean we accuse anyone publicly. I wouldn't. It means we continue doing exactly what we've been doing. Following the documents." She smiled. "Exactly." Over the next several days, we told no one about the emails. Not the residents, not the Marina employees, not even Sheriff Brooks. The evidence needed to stay exactly where it belonged until the appropriate time. Meanwhile, Pine Harbor continued pretending nothing had changed. Vanessa attended board meetings. Newsletters praised another successful boating season. Promotional brochures advertised convenient marina access as one of the community's greatest amenities. Watching it unfold felt strangely uncomfortable. Most homeowners had no reason to question what they'd been told. Families had purchased homes believing the board had handled these issues years before. They weren't my enemies. Many of them were victims of the same assumptions. Rachel agreed. "Remember who we're dealing with. The board? The decisions." That distinction mattered. Our dispute wasn't with retirees enjoying weekends on the lake. It wasn't with children learning to fish. It wasn't with mechanics repairing boats. It was with people responsible for making decisions backed by paperwork that didn't appear to exist. On the 45th day, Harbor Ridge's deadline officially expired. No easement arrived. No recorded agreement. No proposal to purchase legal access. Nothing. Instead, another letter from the HOA's attorney appeared. More discussion of historical use. More references to community dependence. More arguments. Still no documentation. Rachel folded the letter and slipped it into our evidence binder. I think we're finished waiting. I looked toward the calendar hanging on her office wall. One date had already been circled weeks earlier. Lake Festival weekend. The busiest boating weekend of the entire summer. Rachel followed my eyes. Everything changes that morning. I already knew she wasn't talking about the festival. She was talking about the moment assumptions would finally meet the county records. And this time, everyone would be watching. Lake Festival weekend arrived exactly as the Chamber of Commerce had hoped. Boat trailers stretched down the county road before sunrise. Food vendors unloaded coolers. Families carried fishing poles toward the docks, while Marina employees unlocked fuel pumps and prepared rental slips for the busiest day of the year. Everything depended on one road. At 6:30 that morning, I parked beside the old fence line with the same leather folder I'd carried since this began. Rachel Mercer stood beside me. Clay Dawson arrived a few minutes later, carrying the final signed survey. Neither of us needed to say much. We'd already said everything on paper. At exactly 7 o'clock, 2 sheriff's trucks rolled slowly into position across the entrance road. No lights, no sirens. Just Sheriff Daniel Brooks honoring the civil standby Rachel had requested days earlier to prevent any confrontation, while a private property owner exercised his legal rights. One deputy stepped out carrying a copy of the survey. The other positioned temporary barricades across the roadway. Traffic stopped almost immediately. Drivers climbed from their trucks. Questions spread faster than rumors ever could. What happened? Is there an accident? Why are the deputies here? Within minutes, more than 50 people stood near the barricades. Then Vanessa Holloway arrived. Her white SUV slid onto the gravel shoulder, stopping so abruptly that dust drifted across the entrance. She stepped out, already speaking. "This is outrageous." She marched directly toward Sheriff Brooks. "You cannot close access to our marina." Sheriff Brooks remained calm. "Good morning, Ms. Holloway. I want these barricades removed immediately. We're conducting a civil standby. You're preventing residents from reaching private property. The marina remains open." She pointed toward the blocked road. "Then move your trucks." Before the sheriff could answer, she spotted me standing beside the survey stakes. Her expression hardened. "This was your idea." I set my coffee on the tailgate of my pickup. "No. You're shutting down the marina." "I haven't touched the marina." She threw both hands into the air. "Then explain this." I looked down the gravel road. "The marina belongs to Pine Harbor." Several people nodded. I continued. "The road doesn't." Silence rolled through the crowd. Not disbelief, confusion. A man holding a tackle box frowned. "What does that mean?" Rachel stepped forward without raising her voice. "It means access across this corridor is currently subject to a private property dispute supported by recorded county documents." Vanessa immediately interrupted. "The community has used this road for decades." Rachel nodded politely. "We're aware. Our residents depend on it." "We're aware. Our property values were built around it. We're aware of that as well." Vanessa folded her arms. "Then this is ridiculous." Rachel opened the evidence binder. "Can you produce the recorded permanent easement?" Vanessa looked toward the sheriff. "This is legal harassment." Sheriff Brooks spoke for the first time in several minutes. "Ma'am, do you have documentation establishing permanent recorded access across Mr. Caldwell's property?" She hesitated. "Our attorney has handled those matters." "I understand." "Then ask him." We did. The sheriff's answer landed harder than anyone expected. He did not provide one. The crowd grew noticeably quieter. Clay Dawson unrolled the completed survey across the hood of my truck. Bright boundary lines ran directly beneath the entrance road. Rachel placed certified title records beside it, then copies of the expired construction agreement. Finally, the county easement search. Nobody argued with the documents. They simply stared. Homeowners stepped closer. Several began reading page after page in complete silence. One elderly couple whispered to each other while comparing the survey to the roadway behind the barricades. The entire atmosphere changed. For the first time that morning, people stopped questioning me. They started questioning everything they'd been told. Then a familiar voice broke the silence. Frank Miller, the retired school principal I'd met weeks earlier. He stepped out of the crowd and looked directly at Vanessa. His question was quiet, simple, impossible to ignore. Vanessa, he held up one of Rachel's survey copies. Did Pine Harbor ever actually own this road? The question lingered over the crowd. No one interrupted. No one looked at me. Every pair of eyes settled on Vanessa Holloway. She glanced toward the marina behind her, then back at Frank Miller. The community has always had access, she answered. Frank nodded once. That isn't what I asked. The silence became almost uncomfortable. Another homeowner stepped forward, a woman I recognized from the Marina store. If the road wasn't ours, she asked carefully, why were we told permanent marina access came with our homes? Vanessa took a slow breath. Those issues are more complicated than they appear. Rachel Mercer opened the evidence binder. They don't have to be. She handed Frank a certified copy of the county easement search. Then another resident received the boundary survey. A third examined the expired construction access agreement. Nobody needed a legal education to understand what they were reading. The headings spoke for themselves. Temporary construction access, expired. No recorded replacement located. People began comparing pages. Neighbors pointed to dates. Someone asked where the permanent easement had gone. Someone else asked why no one had mentioned the expired agreement before. The conversations spread through the crowd like ripples across still water. Vanessa tried to regain control. These documents don't change decades of community use, Rachel answered calmly. They don't erase community use. She tapped the survey. They establish ownership. Sheriff Daniel Brooks stepped beside the hood of my truck. He waited until the crowd settled before speaking. My office isn't here to determine civil liability. His voice remained steady. We're here to keep the peace while property rights are exercised. He picked up the survey. Based on the documents presented today and the county records currently available. He paused only long enough to ensure everyone could hear him. This roadway is located within Mr. Caldwell's recorded property. No applause followed. Real life rarely works that way. Instead, dozens of people quietly absorbed the weight of those words. Frank looked toward Vanessa again. Were you aware of this? She hesitated. Our legal counsel has been reviewing these issues. That's not what I asked. She said nothing. Rachel didn't mention the archived email. Neither did I. We didn't need to. The documents already spoke loudly enough. One man folded his survey copy and shook his head. I bought here because the sales brochure promised permanent marina access. Another homeowner quietly added, so did we. Within minutes, the frustration that had been directed toward me shifted somewhere else entirely. Not toward the deputies, not toward Rachel, toward unanswered questions, toward missing paperwork, toward years of assumptions. A member of the marina maintenance crew slowly walked over. I've worked here almost 10 years. He looked at Vanessa. Nobody ever told us the access was temporary. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since I'd met her, she had no prepared answer. Sheriff Brooks motioned toward the barricades. Until the ownership issues are lawfully resolved or another agreement is reached, this private roadway remains under the property owner's control. His statement wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. It was simply the legal reality. People slowly returned to their vehicles. Some stayed behind talking with Rachel. Others photographed the surveys with their phones. Several homeowners asked for copies of the title records. Nobody argued anymore. They wanted facts. As the crowd gradually dispersed, Frank stopped beside me. "I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything." We all believed the same story. I looked toward the marina. So did I. At first. He folded the survey and slipped it beneath his arm. The difference is, he glanced back toward the departing homeowners. "You checked." I watched the last few vehicles leave the entrance road before loading the documents back into my truck. The loudest battle of the day hadn't been won with raised voices. It had been won with county records, surveys, and one simple question no one had asked for years. What happened next would decide whether Pine Harbor finally accepted the truth or continued paying the price for ignoring it. For 2 weeks after Lake Festival, Pine Harbor stopped sounding confident. The board meetings filled up. Homeowners demanded copies of every access document Vanessa Holloway had ever claimed existed. Marina slip owners wanted to know why a $6 million facility had been advertised with permanent road access that no one could produce. Lenders started asking questions. Insurance carriers did too. That was when the real pressure arrived. Not from me, from the people Vanessa had been representing for years. Rachel Mercer received 3 separate calls from homeowners' attorneys before the end of the month. None of them threatened me. They all asked the same thing. What would lawful temporary access require? That was the first honest question Pine Harbor had asked. Rachel drafted a narrow emergency access agreement. Fire, ambulance, law enforcement, fuel safety service, and limited marina maintenance could cross the ranch road under written conditions. No public events, no commercial expansion, no claim of ownership, no implication of permanent rights. Every sentence was clear. Every term was signed. Every page was recorded. That mattered to me more than the victory. Because the problem had never been people driving across land. The problem was people pretending permission was ownership. Vanessa resigned at the next board meeting. No speech, no apology. Just an announcement read by another board member, while residents sat in folding chairs beneath fluorescent lights, holding copies of surveys she had ignored. Her white SUV stopped appearing near the Marina Road after that. A new interim board hired outside counsel, engineers, and a title company that actually did the work the old board should have done years earlier. The answer was expensive. A new access road had to be built across land Pine Harbor truly owned. It required grading, drainage, culverts, environmental permits, and a new entrance connection to the county road. It cost more than anyone wanted to admit. But for the first time, the money was being spent on a real solution instead of another assumption. Construction began in late fall. I watched from my side of the fence as survey crews marked the new route with orange flags. Bulldozers moved carefully through cleared ground. Gravel trucks arrived one after another. This time, every map matched every deed. No guessing, no speeches, no borrowed authority. Frank Miller stopped by one afternoon while crews worked in the distance. "Folks are still angry," he said. "They should be. Not all of them are angry at you anymore. I was never asking them to be." He looked toward the old ranch road. "You could have made this a lot worse." "I could have." "Why didn't you?" I thought about that for a moment. Because most of them bought a story. They didn't write it. Frank nodded slowly. "That's fair." By spring, Pine Harbor's new road opened. The marina survived. Smaller, quieter, and more careful with its paperwork. The old ranch road closed to public traffic the same day. I drove out near sunset and stood beside the first survey stake Clay Dawson had placed months earlier. The constant sound of boat trailers was gone. No golf carts, no fuel trucks, no security SUV telling me where I could drive. just fence wire humming lightly in the wind and lake water shining through the trees. I installed one simple wooden sign at the entrance. Private Ranch Road. Written permission required. Nothing more. I didn't need threats. The deed did the talking. Looking back, people sometimes ask whether I feel like I won. I don't think of it that way. Winning sounds loud. This was quieter than that. This was a road going back to the land it belonged to. This was homeowners finally seeing the documents they should have seen before buying. This was a board learning that tradition is not a title, confidence is not a covenant, and a repeated story is not the same thing as a recorded right. I bought that ranch because I wanted peace. For a while, all I found was traffic, letters, complaints, and a woman who thought years of use could erase a boundary line. But paperwork has a memory people don't. It remembers signatures. It remembers dates. It remembers what was granted, what expired, and what was never given in the first place. So if somebody ever stands on your land and tells you they have always had the right to be there, don't shout, don't guess, don't threaten. Go to the courthouse, pull the deed, read the survey, find the agreement, because the loudest person at the gate may control the crowd for a while, but the quietest page in the county records can still close the road.
If this is parent told me anything, is that place is worth protecting, and the best way to protect it is with just not assumption. I didn't set out or thought of Marina or embarrass anyone. I probably ran because I need a quiet place to rebuild my life. What changed everything wasn't adjustment or a confrontation. It was taking the time to read the list, verify the surveys, and let the facts speak for themselves. In the end, the referral is rightful by the communities found a lawful solution, and everyone has a chance to move forward on solid ground instead of uncertain promise. That's something I think applies for beyond property lines, whether it's your land, your home, or simple your good name. Standing your ground doesn't always mean raising your voice. Sometimes it means staying patient, asking the right question, and trusting that honest can outlast confusion. Question rarely make hidden lies, but it often leaves me strongly legacy. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with an HOA, a property dispute, or a situation where the paperwork told a very different story than what everyone believes? If you have, drop a yes in the comment, and if you never experienced anything like this, leave a zero and let us know where you are watching from. I always enjoy reading your story and hearing different perspectives. If you enjoy the story about brand life, property rights, crime preservances, and people who choose wisdom over conflict, I'd be honored to have a surprise and join us for the next story. Until then, take care of yourself and never underestimate the value of knowing that truly belongs to you.